The active phase of the war in Ukraine could theoretically end as early as this autumn if the Russian president sees that his army is unable to advance further on the front. This was stated by Mijaíl Podoliak, advisor to the head of the Office of the President of Ukraine, during a television marathon. He noted that Vladimir Putin is currently conducting his summer offensive campaign, hoping to seize new territories. However, it is already clear that this offensive has turned out to be a failure. He is conducting a summer offensive and believes that he can capture either Mala-Tokmashka or Kupiansk. He now has two obsessions, and accordingly, if this fails, then in the autumn there could be, I'm speaking here as a model, the cessation of the active phase of the war, meaning a halt to missile and drone strikes, a stop to active combat operations along the front line, a freeze, monitoring, and intermediaries standing by, says Mijaíl Podoliak. According to him, under such a scenario, the lifting of martial law in Ukraine and the beginning of preparations for elections become possible. At the same time, recently there have been active rumors circulating about possible negotiations between the European Union and Russia, and discussions are underway about which former European figures should represent the EU in peace talks with Russia. As Natalie Tocci writes in a column for The Guardian, the discussion remains abstract for now, since no negotiations are expected and the war in Ukraine continues. However, even if the idle talk about which reliable negotiators could negotiate with Putin is premature, it reveals a deeper truth about what is happening. I have not felt such confidence since the end of 2022, she writes. The author notes that Ukrainians have no illusions about the war. They have endured a devastating winter during which Russia destroyed much of their energy infrastructure, and they are expecting another terrible winter ahead. At the same time, many fear that Moscow will also target the water supply infrastructure. Ukrainians have also realized the betrayal by the United States and take it for granted that US military support, which was reduced after Trump returned to power, will not resume. They also assume that the temporary suspension of US sanctions on Russian oil will become permanent. More broadly, they do not believe that the war will end anytime soon. In fact, most people believe, as I do, that as long as Putin remains in power, the war will continue. Ukrainians also do not believe that, under the current circumstances, they will be able to reclaim significant portions of the territories occupied by Russia, she writes. At the same time, however, Ukrainians also see that the Russian war machine is moving slower and slower, almost coming to a halt, and the cracks in the Russian economy are becoming increasingly apparent. This does not mean that Putin will stop, but it does strengthen Ukrainians' confidence in their ability to continue resisting. The achievements of the Ukrainian defense industry also play a significant role here. If 4 years ago Ukraine was completely dependent on military support from abroad, today about 60% of the military capabilities used by Ukrainian forces are produced domestically, and the line of European defense companies seeking partnerships with their Ukrainian counterparts continues to grow. Ukrainians are confident that European governments will not abandon them. This confidence was strengthened after the ousting of Orbán, who had become Putin's mouthpiece and a Trojan horse in Brussels. This has nothing to do with faith in the kindness of European hearts or trust in solidarity, but nevertheless, Ukrainians feel that Europeans will support them, based on a sober assessment of what European support actually means.